Nowhere is this more evident than in the lengthening bread queues in Libya. High oil prices and the rising cost of basic food could threaten future political stability. Tim Friend reports.
Not guns or missiles, but food. And in a protracted conflict in Libya, it could determine the outcome more crucially than any conventional weapon. Here in rebel-held AlJazeera, the baker, Agu Fakri, reveals that the use of food as a weapon by Gaddafi supporters has already begun.
Obviously, there's no stock of flour left. We had a small quantity coming from Tripoli, but it was taken back. We saw it on TV being brought as far as Sirte. We saw that the leader said the flour could come to the east, and then the flour was turned back by those highway bandits of his.
The World Food Programme is calling for urgent and safe access to Libya after a ship carrying vital food aid was unable to dock at the port city of Benghazi on the Mediterranean coast due to security concerns. The WFP has launched an emergency operation costing more than $39 million to provide much-needed food aid for Libyans inside the country and those who fled into neighbouring Tunisia and Egypt.
We were getting reports from those crossing the border into Tunisia just earlier this week about food being used as a potential weapon. We heard that some of Gaddafi's supporters were trying to deny some of the rebels food in certain areas. I mean, if they see any food trucks coming in, they may be able to stop them. And this is the last thing we want to see, of course, because food should be available to everybody.
Libya relies on food imports. A staggering 90% of all food supplies come from abroad. Many foreign workers are employed in farming and food production, but with migrants fleeing in their thousands, food supplies are suffering. But it's not only food. In 2000, more than a quarter of the population did not have access to safe drinking water. Global food prices have already reached new highs this year and could suffer the impact of further oil price spikes amid turmoil in Libya and the Middle East. Skyrocketing food prices were among the triggers for protests in Egypt and Tunisia. And once again, they're playing a central role in revolution. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera.
Libyan state television has been showing pictures of people they say have confessed to misleading foreign media outlets. Some of the men paraded on state television appear bruised and battered. The men told Libyan television they apparently didn't know what they were doing. The Obama administration is under increasing pressure to impose a no-fly zone over Libya, but so far it's ruled out getting involved in any military action. Well, earlier we spoke to Zbigniew Brzezinski, a former national security advisor to the Carter administration. He says the U.S. should play a more strategic role.
We are not destined, nor should we be, to act as the sole policeman of the world, whether it is in our interest or it is not. I think we have to judge each case on its merits. But in this particular case, I do think that some greater but indirect involvement would send the right message and move events in Libya in the right direction. I think a deployment of ships right off the shores of Tripoli would in itself send an important message. If it was tied also to the possible unilateral evacuation of Westerners, it would send a stronger message. And all of that would be an indication to the very uncertain and divided Libyan military that it is not in their interest to be supporting Gaddafi.
Anti-government voices in Iraq are getting louder. On Friday, thousands of protesters rallied in Baghdad's Tahrir Square. Fed up with poor salaries and bad public services, they want Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's government to shape up or go. Al Jazeera's Jane Araf reports.
Iraq's government may be just a few months old, but already these Iraqis want a new one. "We're sorry we elected you," they chant. And the symbol of last year's elections, now a subject of derision. Among the crowd, Muntadhir Zaidi, the man who so famously threw his shoe at U.S. President George Bush 2 years ago.
I believe and I'm very optimistic by the brave Iraqi people who will demonstrate every Friday, and this is a continuing force that will shake the Iraqi government and have them answer our demands.
And the first demand, he says, is to end the American presence in Iraq. It was clear Prime Minister Maliki's promise to improve services within 100 days wasn't enough.
And if you tell us that 100 days is enough, it's not enough, because we will still remind you that we are here and we can do change.
After last week's protest turned violent, riot police were on high alert.
Authorities ordered these protesters to go more than an hour ago, but they're in no mood to leave. It's not just the hours it took them to walk here, it's the years they've been waiting for their lives to improve.
It's a test for the government and a test for security forces. How to deal with demonstrators who aren't letting curfews, blast walls, or riot police keep them away. Jane Araf, AlJazeera, Baghdad.
There's been further unrest on the streets of Bahrain as protesters call for sweeping political reforms. Thousands of anti-government demonstrators surrounded state television headquarters in the town of Essa. It follows clashes between Sunni and Shia groups on Thursday, the first direct confrontation between the two sides since the start of large-scale protests. Hundreds of Omanis have demonstrated across the Sultanate demanding jobs and political reforms. The normally sleepy Gulf country has seen a series of protests for and against Sultan Qaboos bin Said, who's ruled with absolute power for 40 years. Yemen's president has rejected opposition proposals for a transfer of power. Ali Abdullah Saleh is sticking to his earlier offer to step down when his term ends in 2013. Demonstrators in the capital, Sana'a, have been demanding his immediate resignation. Hashim Ahalbara reports.
Sana'a University Square, the focal point of the anti-government demonstrations. Again, thousands gathered after Friday prayers, chanting the slogans which have echoed across the country. The president has to go. Opposition members take to the podium, reminding the crowd that their fight will be a protracted one, but that eventually President Saleh will be forced out.
I wish if he understands to get out from our home, because we want to be free. We want to be free. Please, Ali, get out.
At their own rally, President Saleh's loyalists are firing back. They gathered in thousands in a show of support for their beleaguered leader. Influential tribesmen, clerics, and members of his ruling party joined anti-government protesters, accusing him of dragging his heels on reform.
This is Tahrir Square. This is where the anti-government protesters initially wanted to gather, but they were denied access to this site, which is now occupied by Ali Abdullah Saleh's loyalists. As you can see behind me, they are very defiant. They're brandishing banners and posters saying that the president remains the symbol of unity and stability, and that the future of Yemen can only be decided through ballot box.
The government and official media denounces the protesters as anarchists, conspiring with Western powers to destabilize the country.
Yeah, I'd like to tell the world that Ali Abdullah Saleh is our father, the father of all Yemenis. We want peace. We don't want terrorism. We don't want a war, a civil war between Yemenis.
3 weeks since the start of the popular demands, attempts to broker a deal between the president and the